I spent 2 years testing the limits of a stock M54. In this case, a M54 B30. When I say stock, I mean stock head gaskets, stock head bolts, stock pistons, stock rods, stock bearings. This was a 175,000 mile motor that I beat to death for 2 years. I ultimately had a catastrophic failure, but it wasn't the engine's fault, it was mine. Let's look back on how I got here. Those clips were from various stages of this project, which was a 2002 530i Sport ZF 5-speed with the M54 B30 and 175,000 miles on it. This car remained my daily driver through the whole project. My original goal was a super reliable, quick spooling 350 horsepower. I went with a Spa T3 cast manifold, super strong, reliable, proven to make power. I went with a Garrett GTX 3076 T3, fairly small turbo, easy to spool, easily make the 350 horsepower that I was looking for. The only modification to the motor, other than the turbo, was a M50 intake manifold, strictly because the M54 manifolds commonly leak under boost, and I didn't want to have to deal with that issue in the future. Once I got that all in, I needed to find a tuning solution. The car was stock ECU and a friend recommended B Racing tuning service. I reached out to them, gave him an idea of what I was looking for. We set up a day to put the car on the dyno. At the end of the tuning session, it made a little over 360 at the tire, which was great. So I ran around on that for a couple weeks, and I had made a little bit better flowing exhaust utilizing a stock M5 muffler and a custom mid-pipe. Put it back on the dyno, he touched the tune up, it made just over 400, and then I started looking at a methanol injection system. I went with Aquamist, he touched the tune up with that, it made mid-4s I believe, first try, still low boost, maybe around 15 pounds. Drove it around like that for a while. Turned it up more. Got to the low 20s, the car made 500. Ended up at 28 pounds with methanol and just regular 93 pump gas. Made 560 wheel horsepower. Jules from B Racing kept the torque super safe down low, which is what keeps these motors alive. That's the key to keeping the M54s and most of the stock rod BMW 6-cylinders alive, is keeping the torque curve safe in low RPMs. My first failure on the car was the transmission. I was at the drag strip trying to get the car off the line, got into some wheel hop, transmission got real noisy. Still drove around fine, first gear, just a lot of whining. So I was already planning to do a transmission swap anyway. I kind of was leaning towards going with a 6-speed manual. After I did a little more research, I was starting to get interested in the 7-speed DCT out of the 3 Series E90. Controlling those is still difficult. I'm not gonna say it's difficult. It's hard to get a nice driving, stock feeling setup outside of the original car that it came in. Wide open throttle, manual shifting, all seem easily attainable to have a nice feel, but it just sticking the car and driving around town seems to be difficult. I kind of overlooked that, just hoping that maybe I could be the one that gets around that and comes up with a really good driving setup. So I went that route, bought a DCT, put it in. Then you have to have a controller for the DCT. I had been flirting with the idea of putting the car on standalone anyway, so I was looking at options that could handle the motor and the transmission. I went with a max ECU setup. I was recommended by a DCT tuning guy that I was trying to learn some stuff from. So I bought all that, put that on. My buddy Matt Shue of Shoe Tuning in Richmond, Virginia was happy to give it a shot. So we hopped on the dyno. He spent quite a few hours on it, getting the car to shift and run right. It never made more power than it made on the stock ECU, but the car was much quicker. There was one big problem with it, and that is I'm a manual transmission guy. The idea of the DCT was cool, quick shifting. I was hoping I could tune on getting the car to launch well rather than using a regular clutch. But driving around town, there's nothing better than a manual transmission, and I just wasn't in love with the DCT. And ultimately, the DCT is what led to this video. And I say that, it wasn't the DCT, it was my improper use of the DCT that led us here. I was experimenting with plans of swapping the DCT back out of the car and putting a manual in it. It was getting late in the year and I wasn't ready to do that part of the project yet, so I was kind of just driving the car and enjoying it. Let's pause the story here for a minute so you can see my reaction when I realized that the piston also hit the head and bent all the valves. So what caused this? I did. I was driving the car one morning. It was a cool morning in October or November, and my work had a longer curvy driveway that led to the parking lot, and I often would use that as a test spot. And this particular morning I was in second gear and I rolled into it wide open, full load, full boost, and 28 pounds of boost, and for whatever reason decided to hit the up paddle into third gear at around 5,500 RPMs. And the DCT went into third gear as requested. Full load, full boost, full throttle, low RPM, and it immediately ejected a rod onto the road. So how much power can an M54 hold? At least 560. Had I not short shifted that day, I have no doubt that motor would still be alive. The weak link, I would say, would be a stock head gasket, and at some point I have to believe that I would have been forced to change that head gasket. But the motor itself can handle it. I'm also aware of another E39 5 Series that's making in the same power range, if not more, maybe closer to 600. It's all about torque management. These motors are reliable, they can handle the power, they can make the power, and they can do it every day. I proved it. I drove this car every day. This was my daily driver.